For those of you who know our American, I'm from speaking from those of us in the American diaspora, those of us who are outside of America, and this is one of our most, if not the most important American holiday. I reach out to you and I wish you a happy Thanksgiving. This Thanksgiving, as many Thanksgiving in the past, somehow this one particular artist keeps coming up. Outkast. And I wanted to share with you why I think this holiday is the most important one for us and why I wanted to reach out to you and just remind you as we sit down to give thanks for just living in a very turbulent and seemingly increasingly divided time. Outkast. ATL. It just happens that I'm going to see a sister who is from Atlanta and she loves Outkast too. But there's the one verse, the very first verse from this one song I think explains both hip-hop from beginning to end and what I'm thankful for and what I want us to be thankful for as Americans in our first Thanksgiving in a post-election year. Throw your hands in the air. So let's just quickly go to the lyrics. What does the brother say? Well, it's the M.I. cricket letter, ain't no one better. And when I'm on the microphone, you best to wear your sweater because I'm cooler than a polar bear's toenails. Oh, hell, there he go again talking that shit. Bent, corners like a Weisinger. And he goes on, and you can see the lyrics on Google as you wish. But he goes on, and this is what I wanted you to see. He's doing, a typical hip-hop braggadocio about himself. He's representing, where he's from. Even before the verse begins, you're talking about, shout out to College Park and different parts of Atlanta where they're from. And then he's representing. He both puts himself in the first and the third person narrative, and he does that with such an agility that that's what hip hop is. He reads you. He's like, oh, I struck a nerve. Now you're about to see this other player serve. And what does he serve? What does he serve up? Literally interesting metaphor for Thanksgiving. What does he serve up? He said, he spits some knowledge, as hip hop does. You can't just brag, but you have to spit some knowledge. That's part of it. And he says, I heard let's go to the lyrics so I don't get this wrong. You got me, you got me bent. He's saying you got me twisted, as Beyonce says now. He said, I heard it's not where you're from, but where you pay rent. Then I heard it's not what you make, but how much you spent. You got me bent like elbows, but other things, but I ain't worried. And then he talks about spending. So he's actually being critical of materialism, critical of spending, critical of everything that Black Friday represents, critical of the idea that our worth, our value is in spending, in money, how much we earn, how much we spend. Because he also is specifically, as you hear in this verse, critical of credit, even though he never says it. It's not where you're from. He represents where he's from, but it doesn't matter where you're from because we believe in a meritocracy. That's what he's commenting on. I heard it's not where you're from, but where you pay rent. It's not where you're from, but it's where you're going. And to pretend that it doesn't matter who you are and that we can all rise and we can all be equal is exactly why we feel so divided today. Then he goes on to say, but even when we get there, even when we've arrived, when we're all at the mall, as Bell Hooks says, at the mantle of the mall, we all can worship at the same places. We all have free choice, right? We can all buy a ticket to go here or get inside this or buy these shoes, and we can all represent it that way, right? So that makes us all equal. That kind of superficial meritocracy, those rewards that the consumer culture gives us. So then he goes on to say, now beyond that, however, no, there's not that. I heard it's not how much you even spend, how much you make, how much money you make, not even how much money you actually have, but how much credit you have access to. Now, as we all know, interestingly, so he's not just saying credit, but access to credit, because that's a specific thing that was exploited in the 2008, that led to the 2008 financial crash, the ballooning of mortgages, the predatory loans that were targeting people who were least prepared to deal with these most sophisticated loans. And most insidiously, these people who had created them were also betting against their failure and going to make money on that through insurance scams. So it's incredible that in such a one verse, the very first verse, and I still haven't finished the verse, right? And why it brings it together with Thanksgiving, but just one verse, he's bringing together this entire critique of what we call free market capitalism. And that's just hip hop. And this is just Thanksgiving, right? Not Black Friday, wink, wink. And so the thing that I love about Thanksgiving, of course, is now you've seen it's the Thursday before the eve of the shopping frenzy to the worship of the mall where we say that we were giving worship to a faith system that's been displaced by consumerism. It's that there are no gifts for Thanksgiving. There's nothing to buy. We just come together and eat. And so what that's meant for me this Thanksgiving, is typically is we share recipes. We agree who's going to bring what for the meal, who's going to do what for the pre-meal. I was talking to my aunt. She's cooking the whole chitlin dinner on the day before Thanksgiving, just for those who want and those who are going to be around. Those are going to be already there preparing for the Thanksgiving dinner the next day already. And she was sharing recipes with me, and I won't share with you the secret greens ingredients that she shared with me, but it does deal with smoked meat of one variation or another, but it is very specific. And so already families are coming together because I'm just getting recipes from her abroad so that I can go to the American who lives around the corner and make those greens. I can go to the American I'm going to tonight in London and enjoy different kinds of food from our home, but also reaching out to those around us, because that's what this Thanksgiving is about, is that we come together. There is no consumerism, no commercialism. And it's a festival of the harvest. So, of course, I picked bay leaves, rosemary, and peppers. Maybe I'll even take her some lavender from my garden. I will harvest what I have, and we will share it, and we will come together, and we will sit down, we will enjoy a meal, and sit down and talk about how thankful we are, no matter how horrible the world is around us. Our determination is to face it fiercely, fed, nourished, with the determination to come together, and that coming together is above all what will forge us a way forward beyond the superficialness of the whatever else our politics are behind our own basic human need to just nourish one another. Now notice, I didn't just say to be nourished or to have food, but to actually to feeding the human need to nourish one another, to take care of one another. We're not gonna actually watch each other starve, even if we're enemies. That would be inhumane. And so that's what this is, and this is well before the Geneva Convention, mind you. So this holiday comes together for me in that way, because when we're preparing those meals, and I think why this artist keeps coming up over and over and over, and I know you've been waiting for that, why Outkast? Because when I'm getting together with Black folks, particularly in my age group, and we're getting together a meal for Thanksgiving, which takes hours and hours and, days ahead and traveling and coming and planning and all that stuff, we have a soundtrack, and somehow book-booted music keep coming up, just shake it, shake it, shake it. And this particular, it's like the soul food itself, even though, those of us may have grown up in the Upper South in Chicago and Detroit and in Maryland and DC. In the Upper South, however, we feel very rooted in the Southern traditions that our foreparents came from. We feel very rooted in it, even as migrants or immigrants from Africa and the different parts of the Black diaspora coming to understand and perhaps assimilate into this aspect of American culture and how we gain meaning for it for ourselves. We also see aspects of this richness of Southernness and how Thanksgiving is celebrated. And I am saying that my family is very typical, very average in that way, that we just come together to prepare a meal, to share, each one share what they have, each one teach one, each one come together to just in gratitude and appreciation. Not to black out what else is happening in the world, but to absorb it all, to see it fully, and yet to stand with the determination that above and beyond that is our ability to nourish one another. And therefore there will be peace. Happy Thanksgiving, and shake it like a Polaroid picture. Life and harness